Welcome, and thank you for joining us for Brain Health Begins in the Kitchen, Part 2. My name is Marissa Harris, and I'm the Director of Dining and Head Chef at Kensington Park, a Kensington senior living community offering independent living, assisted living, and 3 levels of memory care in Kensington, Maryland. Kensington Senior Living has 7 unique communities, 2 in Virginia, 1 in Maryland, 1 in New York, and 3 in California. Our promise is to love and care for your family as we do our own. The dining experience at our communities is not only a taste sensation, but also a special occasion every time residents and their guests gather. Table time togetherness is a meaningful opportunity for residents and their families to slow down, share laughs, strengthen bonds, and make memories. Our team of talented and professionally trained chefs create meals that are flavorful, nutritious, and beautifully presented. A special thanks to everyone who tuned in to watch Part 1. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and that you learned something new. We are so delighted for tonight's special presentation all about Chef Annie's favorite fall recipes. If you're new to the Zoom platform, this presentation is in webinar format. This means your cameras and microphones will remain off and muted throughout the presentation. We will be answering questions that were previously submitted at the time of registration, but we'll also answer additional questions submitted in the Q&A if time permits. And now, I am proud to introduce our special guest, Dr. Annie Fenn, a physician, chef, and founder of the Brain Health Kitchen, the only culinary school of its kind focused specifically on fending off age-related cognitive decline. She teaches the Brain Health Kitchen method of cooking throughout the US and abroad, with emphasis on neuroprotective ingredients and brain-friendly cooking techniques. Her mission is to help you take care of your brain while still eating delicious food. Welcome, Chef Annie.
Hello. Thank you for having me back. I had so much fun last time.
Thanks for being here.
It's really good to see everyone. I got a lot of really nice emails from participants from last week, a lot of really good questions. So I'm excited to cook again with you all.
Well, we're happy to have you here. I hate to run, but I gotta go get dinner ready tonight for our residents.
Tell me what you're making for dinner tonight.
Tonight we have prime rib and seared salmon.
Oh my goodness. You're eating really well. I love it. I love it.
Well, good luck tonight.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. Hi, everybody. If you didn't come to Part 1, I'm Dr. Annie Fenn. We had a fabulous time cooking up pantry staples. If you did miss Part 1, I wanted to give you a little recap of what we talked about. So we talked about the 5 foods I want you to eat every day. And they are, you can type them in the chat if you want to test yourself, but basically they're berries, leafy greens, vegetables, whole grains, and nuts. And these are the 5 food groups that are part of the Mind Diet study, they're part of the Mediterranean diet. No matter what kind of dietary pattern you follow, whether it's vegan or plant-based or anything like that, these 5 food groups, pretty much all experts agree, are what you should be eating every day for your brain. So that's number 1. We also went over some of the foods I want you to limit or avoid in your cooking and your eating. Number 1, ultra processed food. There's a new paper that just came out about how your your risk of dementia goes up with each serving of ultra processed food that you consume. And there's also another study that showed that your risk of dementia goes down as you cut these foods out. So that's definitely number 1. Processed foods, especially processed dairy and processed meat, are at the top of my avoid list. Other things on the list are avoiding sugary drinks. Americans in general consume a lot of added sugar in the things that they choose to drink. So that's a really easy thing to cut out for most people. Fast and fried food, and then pastries and sweets. Those are the 5 brain harming food groups according to the Mind Diet study. There's really good science behind limiting or avoiding those food groups. So as part of your homework, in Part 1, I asked you to do a couple things, and we're going to go over that when I give you homework for Part 2. So just think about what you did this week. You know, I asked you to add a fermented food to your diet, asked you to swap out a dairy product for something else. Think about the things that you did over the last couple weeks since our last cooking class in August. And be sure to share those with me in the chat. So tonight I have a really great menu for you. Someone sent me a message on Instagram asking me, how are you going to cook all of those things in a very short class? Well, we're going to do it. We're going to give it a good try at least. The one thing that I always love to share with people first is, there's not a lot of cheese in the brain healthy diet because it's high in saturated fat. And snacking on cheese is just not really a good habit. I mean, I eat some cheese, but I'm not buying it and cutting it in wedges and eating it after dinner with crackers all the time. So what do you serve instead of cheese and crackers when you have people over? Well, one of my answers to that question is you are going to serve crispy artichokes with preserved lemon cashew cream. So this is easy and it's economical. You just get a can of artichokes that have already been quartered or halved. And you might want to check the label and make sure there's not too much added sodium. If there is some sodium in there, you're just going to rinse them anyway, so don't worry about it too much. And then what I did was I drained the artichokes. I don't use that artichoke water, throw that away. And then I blotted them dry really well with paper towels, because the drier these artichokes are when they go into the oven, the more crispy they're going to be when they come out. And then I just tossed them with a little bit of avocado oil, which is the oil I like to use for high temperature cooking. We're going to put these in a hot oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So they just have a little bit of avocado oil on them, a little bit of salt, and that's it. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the oven so we can see what it looks like in a little while. And then last time we all made some preserved lemons. Here's how mine are looking. And one thing I don't think I mentioned last time was, as your lemons settle, they will collapse in the jar, which means you have room at the top. You see mine? It was super full when the lemons were fresh. And over the course of 3 weeks, these have been lacto fermenting, which means that they are creating lots of gut and brain beneficial microbes that are really good to eat. And they're really good for helping you cultivate a healthy gut microbiome. So mine are pretty soft. So now what you can do is you can open up the jar. I try not to touch the lid or anything because I want to keep this as clean as possible. And I've got my last jar of preserved lemons. And these are still usable. I'm going to pour them on top and use all of that brine that has even more microbes, because this jar has been going since about April. And I'm going to make sure that the lemons are covered completely. I'm going to use these for the dip for the artichokes. I'm going to put the lid on. I have little clips that go on these. See how it's airtight, it's dripping. So this is my new stash of preserved lemons. And we talked a lot about what we can do with those. If you don't have preserved lemons, you can buy them too in the grocery store near the condiments. But if you don't have your own and you don't want to buy them, then just take a lemon and grate it first and put it into our cashew cream. This is for our preserved lemon cashew cream, and then juice it and stir it into the cream. That's what you do if you don't have a preserved lemon. If you have a preserved lemon, you just have like this extra layer of briny, just yumminess. It's really delicious. Like I was saying before, the lemon gets so mellow that you can't believe you're eating whole lemon. Because you're eating the whole thing, you are also ingesting a lot of the fiber. We talked a little bit about the importance of fiber in a brain healthy diet. One of the reasons fiber is so important is that it helps keep your blood sugar stable. And you know how we talked about having a diet that has a lot of blood sugar, a lot of sugary foods that hit your bloodstream really fast is not good. So the way you reduce that, one of the ways you reduce that is by including a lot of fiber in your diet. So another reason the fiber is good for you is because it's what feeds your gut microbiota. It's what really helps them become, more diverse and really healthy. So I'm just going to add this chopped preserved lemon into my cashew cream. This is just plain cashew cream. It's not the same one we made a couple weeks ago. The shelf life on that is about 4 to 5 days. So I used that one up and I made a fresh batch. I'm going to add a tiny bit of salt. Oh, you don't need much salt because the lemons are salt. And that's going to be our dip for when the artichokes come out of the oven. So this is one of the things you can serve instead of cheese and crackers. It doesn't have to be artichokes if that's not your cup of tea. You could serve this with crudité, like sliced carrots, sliced pieces of fennel is delicious with this. Fennel lemon is always a good combination. You could use just, carrot sticks. You could use this as a sauce for fish or chicken or tofu. It's got lots and lots of uses in your kitchen. And I think you'll agree that it's absolutely delicious. So I'm going to let the preserved lemons and the cashew cream kind of marry for a little while and let that set up. And then we're going to get on to our soup. Now the soup, this is one of my favorite soups. It's a mushroom and delicata squash soup with farro. And when you keep in mind those food groups that we have talked about, this is another way to get vegetables into your diet. I consider mushrooms an honorary vegetable. There's so much data behind mushrooms that show that they're really good for us. 10 years or so, we didn't even think that they did anything for your health. But now we know they're packed with certain antioxidants. It's hard to get anyplace else, like ergothioneine and glutathione, two really potent antioxidants. So I love cooking with mushrooms in the Brain Health Kitchen. They also provide vitamin D. It's one of the few dietary sources of vitamin D. So for our soup, I just got it started. I was very excited to find a delicata squash at a grocery store because this is a real seasonal food. These are just coming into season. And what I've got going already is I have my shallots and my celery and my garlic. And that takes a little while to sweat. Like if you can take some time and whenever you're cooking with onions or scallions or leeks or something like that, you want to cook them at a really low temperature in a small amount of olive oil with a pinch of salt to slow down how fast it cooks. That really helps. And you develop a lot of flavor by not trying to do this too fast. So I do this basically at the lowest setting of my burner. And I just really want to get them a little bit nicely brown and caramelized. I don't want to, burn the garlic or anything like that. So keep a close eye on it. So I'm about 10 minutes into the recipe already. And what we're going to do is add our mushrooms. So this was about a pound of mushrooms that I chopped up. And in your recipe, it just says to coarsely chop them. For something like this, it's not crucial that they all look exactly the same size. They don't have to be like super even slices. It's all going into a soup. So no worries about that. So I'm going to add my mushrooms. And they'll cook down quite a bit. It looks like a lot of mushrooms in the pot, but these are going to cook down. Now, when I cream these mushrooms, I try not to get them too wet because, they actually cook better and absorb flavors that are from the pot if they're a little bit dry. So, you don't want to have dirt in your soup either, but I usually just brush them with a brush in lieu of rinsing them. And then I usually chop off the stem and I save it. So I always have a compost going in my kitchen, but I also have a bag for scraps. And there's mushrooms in here, just mushroom caps. Some of the ones that I thought were bruised, I threw in here. There's some of the shallot ends. Whatever scraps I'm using in the kitchen that are vegetable, they go in here. And then when that bag is full, I make vegetable broth. Or I stick that whole bag in the freezer, just the bag of scraps right in the freezer. And then when I have time later and I feel like it, I will make vegetable broth later. So this is what I did after our last class. I made this vegetable broth and it looks a little different than probably what you buy at the grocery store. It's settled, it doesn't have anything in it to make it, solidify or anything like that. So this is our veggie broth that we're going to use. And I'm also going to use some store-bought that are right enough. When you buy vegetable broth or any kind of broth at the grocery store, it's fine to buy it store-bought. I do about half and half because I don't always have time to make it myself. But you want to go for low sodium. Most of them are loaded with too much salt. I'd rather have you add the salt yourself to season the dish the way you like it. And you're less likely to get too much added sodium that way. And your food will taste a lot better with all that yucky fake sodium in it. So we're sweating these guys down a little bit. Now, the other thing we're going to add to our soup is farro. And I've been soaking my farro just because I had some time. And farro is like a whole wheat berry. It's a really, really great whole grain to introduce into your diet. A lot of people shy away from it because it can take a long time to cook. And it's tricky because there's different types of farro. There's pearled farro, semi-pearled, and sometimes the less pearled it is, the longer it takes to cook. And the more pearled it is, the less fiber it has. So I like a semi-pearled, which is sort of in the medium. And if you soak it, even just for a few minutes, it actually cooks up a lot quicker. But I like to buy my farro. I really like this brand at Whole Foods. If you have Whole Foods near you, they have these little, if you try to eat more grains in your diet, they have these smaller servings because it does go stale pretty quickly. So you only want to buy as much as you think you're going to use. And it cooks quickly, which is really convenient. And it's organic and it's a really good price. So I really like these. It's actually worth going to a Whole Foods just to stock up on lots of different types of grains like farro. So we're going to go ahead and add our Delicata squash. Now, Delicata squash is really fun squash because it's one of the few squashes where you can eat the peel because it's so soft. And a lot of the fruits and vegetable parts that we throw away are actually really good for us, like the seeds and the stems, like the stems of parsley and basil and things like that. And that goes with the skin as well. And so the way I broke this down was I took my Delicata and I just cut it in half lengthwise. And then I scooped out the seeds, there's not that many. And I laid it outside and I cut it into half moons. Easy. And that will cook quite quickly in our sauce. This is one of those soups that looks really complicated, but it actually comes together, you know, while you're making dinner or doing some other things. I'm gonna add my vegetable broth. And a little bit more. And we're going to bring that to a boil and then let it simmer. Now, celery. There's a lot of celery in this, which I love. And the cool thing about celery is when you go to the grocery store and go shopping for celery, I want you to buy it based on, does it have nice leafy leaves on it? Does it have a lot of this leafy part? And sometimes you have to buy just the celery hearts and that's fine. Sometimes they just come bagged as hearts. But if you can find fresh celery that's not in a bag yet, we're going to use these to garnish the soup. It's actually a really pretty way to garnish it. And celery leaves are delicious. Should never throw them away. You can use them like parsley. They do wonders for, you know, a sort of a hearty mushroom soup like this. They do wonders to kind of brighten it up and make it delicious. We're going to finish our soup with some miso paste, some lemon juice, and some lemon zest. And I'm going to go ahead and get this to a boil and add in the farro, which is really, really plumped up on me, which is a good sign. It means it was super fresh. All right. So our soup is good. The miso paste, we talked about, I think, a little bit last time. The miso paste is a fermented food. It's one of those things I love for you to learn how to cook with because it's so good for you. It's like adding a fermented food and also is a flavor bomb for all of your cooking. But I tend to use it at the end of cooking because it contains gut-friendly bacteria. And I don't want to kill them all off by boiling them in my soup. So it's one of those things like the lemon and the zest and the miso. This is just a really nice way to finish the soup, to make it, you know, just extra special, delicious after all of these vegetables cooked down. So this is going to go on a side burner. And if you all have any questions, you can type them in the chat. And Susan is going to be checking the chat for me.
Oh, good timing. Good
Oh,
timing.
good.
Actually, we have some interesting questions that are coming up, but I wanted to say hello to everybody and welcome everybody back and welcome our new audience members. You're in for a real treat today. My name is Susan Evans, and I have a very close relationship with Kensington Senior Living. My father lived there for 7 years and the food was exceptional. So I thought how perfect that would be to pair Annie Fenn with the Kensington Senior Living webinar. So thank you so much, Annie.
Thank you. I've been having a blast.
And also wanted to do a special thank you to our friend, Steve Gurney, who has Pro Aging. I think a lot of you that are signed in today know Steve and know Pro Aging. So thank you so much for joining us today. Annie, I made the artichokes. We had some people over for dinner. I made the artichokes. I encourage everybody. It was the easiest thing. It's easier than serving cheese and crackers.
It kind of is.
No, and it's so beautiful. And I actually did put some kind of different vegetables on the side, but that dip is phenomenal. It's so good. And
Yeah.
actually, I only used 1 can. I encourage everyone to probably use 2.
Yeah, you're going to need to.
I did 2 cans and I used the leftovers later the next day for a salad. Oh, it was so good in the salad. So
Nice.
it was phenomenal. I also made the farro soup.
Oh, you did.
And I'm so glad that you told me not to burn my garlic and shallots, because I always do it at a high heat and kind of get it going. And
Yeah.
I'm going to try your new way. I'm excited.
Oh,
about
did you burn the shallot? It's really easy to do. And everyone's cooktops are a little bit different too.
Exactly. But I do have a question for you. So you make your own vegetable broth.
When I can, yeah.
So the question is, and I know broth is pretty easy to make when you can and you can freeze it and all that stuff, but what is the difference between broth and stock?
Well, stock is a term that's used primarily for animal product broth like chicken and meat, and it includes the bones.
Oh, okay.
So stock is like chicken bones and you make a broth out of it. And vegetable broth is just broth. So I give it that meaty sort of oomph. I use chicken broth too. But when I make vegetable broth, I give it some meaty flavor and oomph by using kombu, which is dried seaweed you can buy in any grocery store. And I put that kombu in the pot with it, and it adds umami. It's like a salty, seaweedy flavor that actually does wonders for vegetable broth.
Okay. And then the miso, I had trouble finding that. And I wonder if our audience will have trouble, but it appears to me yours was refrigerated.
It's next to the tofu in the refrigerated section of where you find the tofu.
Okay. I actually bought mine in the Asian section and it was not refrigerated.
Well, you can also buy it in there's sort of like plastic bags. You pour it out. And there's a really good brand that's like that, that's low sodium, that I like.
I think that's the one I bought. I'll go grab that as soon as you start cooking again, because I don't cook with that. And I was amazed by the flavor and consistency that added to the soup.
Yes. And we're going to use it to make walnut parm too.
Oh, good. I'm excited about that.
It's an amazing thing to have in the kitchen. You know, it seems like a lot of money. I buy it in big tubs because I go through a lot, but you can buy a smaller tub, but it lasts in your kitchen literally forever. So don't ever throw it away.
You use such a little amount.
Such a little bit. So our soup is bubbling, and let me cut that on a little better. And next, I didn't have time to make the walnut parm last time, so we're going to do that next. We're going to do the walnut parm with the garlicky shrimp and the zucchini noodles.
Great.
So let me grab my food processor. Now you might wonder why I would make something to substitute for Parmesan cheese. I mean, I love Parmesan cheese. I adore Parmesan cheese. But, you know, in my campaign to try to eat less cheeses and less animal products, I came across this walnut parm recipe kind of by mistake. I was trying to make sort of a walnut crumbly topping to go on a dish for a cooking class, because walnuts are such an important brain food. You know, walnuts are super high in polyphenols. They're really high in omega-3 fatty acids. They're high in all of those things that you want for your brain. And so I'm always trying to get people to eat more walnuts. So I have these leftover walnuts. I just pulsed them in a food processor with a couple other things. And I came up with this amazing topping that tastes like Parmesan cheese, but it's not. It doesn't substitute for that. Like, you know, how could you? Because parm is parm. But I use it interchangeably. The only thing it doesn't do is melt. So I'll show you how I do it.
The only thing it doesn't do is melt, so you don't get
Yeah.
that melted cheese feeling on
No,
your.
it's more of a crumbly thing.
I would think that would be good in salads too, or even on top of veggies or anything.
It's so good. I have a recipe in the book where I have a roasted beet salad with walnut parm on top.
Oh,
So good
yeah.
with that. It's good on pretty much any roasted vegetable. So all we have is a cup of raw walnuts, a quarter cup of nutritional yeast, which you may or may not have used in the past. It's kind of an old hippie ingredient that's coming back because so many people are going plant-based now. But when I looked into nutritional yeast, I mean, it smells like cheese. It smells like the cheese powder on Cheez-Its. Is what it smells like.
I just bought a bag of that because I used it in one of your recipes, and I was asking my brother, who is an organic farmer, I said, what is this? And he said, oh my God, that's so good for you.
It's so good for you. So it's like a shot of vitamin B. It's a good source of vitamin B12 for people that are whole food plant-based who don't eat animal products. It's got a lot of uses. That's another thing. You might buy a bag of it and go, oh, what am I going to do with all this nutritional yeast? Well, I have lots of ideas for you, so no worries. I have a nice big generous garlic clove, and then I have 2 tablespoons of miso paste and a little bit of flaky salt. We're just going to pulse it until it's right.
You know, a couple of questions that have come in, and one is, someone was talking about the 0 dairy diet. Wrote in that low-fat dairy can be beneficial in the DASH diet, and asked a question about dairy in feta, pecorino cheese, yogurt, and kefir.
About those cheeses?
Yeah, and my understanding is those are goat milk. They don't have dairy. Maybe you can help out.
Well, dairy can be from cows, it can be from goats, it can be from sheep. The difference from these is they have different casein proteins. There's one whole class of proteins that comes from cows, which is A, which is inflammatory for many, many people, and lactose intolerant for many, many people.
Right. Okay.
But if you've ever been lactose intolerant and then you go over to Europe and you eat the cheeses and you're like, wow, these cheeses don't bother me at all. It's because a lot of them are casein 2 and 3, which are from sheep and goat. So they're a little bit kinder, less inflammatory to your gut. And some of these cheeses do have salt. So if you're on the DASH diet, you have to be really careful about that. Like I like feta in my cooking because I don't use a lot of cheese. I just use like super high flavored cheeses like feta and Parmesan and pecorino. But I'm not watching my sodium as closely as some other people. I like the cheeses that have a lot of flavor, so I can get away with using a tiny bit. Okay. I use mozzarella too, which is lower in fat than most cheeses. But you do have to be careful because I don't think that kefir has a lot of salt in it. You certainly have to check the label though. I've never made that at home. I always rely on a store-bought product.
And speaking of salt, someone said that they are on a low sodium and they're concerned about the preserved lemons. But I remember last time you said if you have that concern, rinse them in the water.
Yeah, definitely rinse them, use them in small quantities. It will replace the salt in a dish, which you probably don't use hardly any salt at all. So I would just tread lightly with the preserved lemons if you're on the DASH diet, for sure. Okay, so this is our walnut parm. I wish you guys could smell this. I mean, it's really just like a wonderful alchemy of simple ingredients, and it's a great way to eat more walnuts in conjunction with these other fermented foods and these B vitamin rich foods. So I'm so happy about this. I'm gonna go ahead and put this aside.
Annie, is there gluten in the nutritional yeast?
I don't believe that there's gluten, but there is sometimes MSG. And you know, there was a big thing about MSG years ago. There's a lot of concern that it caused migraines, and for some people it certainly does. But monosodium glutamate can be a really processed product, or it can be like a natural part of an ingredient, like it's part of the yeast. So there is MSG. So if anyone's really concerned about that, they should tread lightly as well.
If the Delicata squash is not in season, can I use a different squash?
Yes, I have a backup butternut squash because I didn't think I would have Delicata. I mean, if you have a squash that has a really thin skin, I think like a Hubbard is one of them. There's a few out there that you can eat the skin. It makes a really fun, nice, variation. But usually if I make this most of the year, I'm just using butternut squash or some other squash that I like. And I peel it and cube it instead so that it will cook, like the time allotted.
And
And
what
it's
other
fine to buy your
uses?
butternut squash already cut up. If that's not your cup of tea, you can certainly cost a little bit more. But if your grocery store does that for you, by all means, make your life a little bit easier.
And the mushrooms, I assume I've heard many times to brush your mushrooms, do not wash them. I would suspect that organic mushrooms is pretty critical in that process.
Yeah, if they have visible dirt on them, I brush them. I might rinse off a few really dirty ones. When I go to the market, I pick out the clean ones, if I'm buying them in bulk. So you can sort of pre-choose which ones you won't have to do too much work to. If I buy them at the farmer's market from my organic farmer, I'm not too concerned about them. But I don't want to get like grit in my food.
No,
That's
we all don't want that.
But yeah, so wash them if you have to. But a lot of times you don't have to. A lot of times you don't. So the next thing we're going to do for our zucchini noodles is we're going to make zucchini noodles. And I don't know if any of you have done this before. I have a spiralizer. You might have one somewhere in your kitchen too that you bought years ago and really haven't dragged it out in a while. But this is basically a little machine that can turn vegetables into noodles. And it's incredibly powerful to be able to do this if you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, or you really want to cut out refined carbohydrates in your diet, like we all do. I eat pasta, but I don't eat nearly as much as I used to, and now it's always whole grain. And a lot of times I'll mix zucchini noodles with my whole grain spaghetti, and I just love that combination. Or if I feel like I just want to eat lighter, maybe I haven't had enough vegetables that day, I'll do a big pile of zucchini noodles. And the fun thing about zucchini noodles is you don't even have to cook them. You can just toss them with a hot sauce, like a marinara sauce, and dinner is basically done. Put some parm or walnut parm on it if you want. And that's basically so easy. It's the easiest dish I can even think of. If you want to cook them, we're going to toss them a little bit in a frying pan after we cook them. So what you do when you shop for your zucchini, you want to shop strategically for one that's kind of straight. It's going to spiralize a lot better. And then I want to make your life easy by cutting it into 2 pieces. Don't try to bring home this like huge squash from the grocery store that's curved. And then you'll get it home and go like, how did Annie even spiralize these things? And then you want to be really careful because that blade is super sharp. Okay. And it has to be on a surface where you can suction it. I like this OXO one because it is just that. It's a really nice, it's got a vacuum suction cup on the bottom, which is actually like absolutely key. So I'm going to go, we'll see if it sticks. I'm going to go ahead and spiralize. And I can make zucchini noodles faster than I can boil water and make pasta.
I do that all the time. And actually, we got all the children spiralizers for Christmas. It was the best thing.
Really?
You can use it for so many different things, to do carrots, make it pretty in a salad. I mean, I've done radish before. There's so many things that you can use it for. It's really a nice little kitchen gadget, and it's not a big thing to store.
Being like a very soft vegetable, it's sort of like the gateway vegetable. It's like noodles 101 with your spiralizer. And then you can move on to leeks, carrots. I've spiralized butternut squash before. There's different blades you can use. They're basically like different pasta shapes. And yeah, the sky's the limit. Kohlrabi is absolutely delicious. And you can make like an Asian style slaw with it. You end up having like these little ends. And I used to use these as centerpieces when I was having a dinner party. But now I just basically chop them up and put them into whatever I'm making. Little bonus pieces of zucchini here.
And a good question just came in. So this person remains anonymous, but they said, I haven't been eating that healthy. And I start eating healthy. Am I going to feel different? And can it actually change the damage I've done to my body?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know anyone who hasn't gone through a period of time where they didn't eat really well. I mean, when I was in medical school, I shudder to think of all the stuff I used to eat. I used to live on like cookies and coffee and Diet Cokes. But your body does recover. So when you first start eating healthy, here's the thing. If you're eating a lot of processed food or a lot of takeout, or you're eating in restaurants a lot, you might not be eating a lot of fiber. And the Brain Healthy Diet contains a lot of fiber. But you want to introduce that slowly. That's the beans, that's the grains, that's the vegetables, that's like raw zucchini, you know, in your pasta. Just introduce it slowly so you don't get any bloating symptoms. Because then you'll be like, wow, I ate so healthy and I feel horrible. So you just gotta be like gentle and slow with it. That's really important. And it takes a while, like your taste buds change. Let's say you really crave like a hamburger and French fries or a milkshake. You really want to go to like your favorite fast food place and get this really, you know, great taco. And that's the food that you're craving. Well, once you start training your body to eat more healthy food, you actually start craving the healthy food the same way, but it takes time. That doesn't happen overnight.
Well, your gut has to adjust and everything. And you mentioned tacos, so I'll mention again your broccoli, not tostadas, quesadillas. Talk about flavor and good. I mean, I couldn't get enough of those. Oh,
those are so good. Okay, so when you guys are done spiralizing, the OXO one, another thing I like about it is that you don't have to touch the blade ever. You just pull it out because people get really injured when they try to clean that. I just run it underwater or throw it in the dishwasher. You never touch the blade with your fingers, okay? Muy importante. But it takes for your gut microbiota to adjust to, and that's how you digest the food. It takes them about 3 to 4 weeks. And that's how long it takes for habits to form too. So like I, at one point I was in the habit of always reaching for a cookie in the afternoon as a pick-me-up. And I literally had to get all the cookies out of the house. None in the freezer too, because that's where I hide them. And just snack on something else, or I started drinking green tea instead. And it takes a couple weeks, and then you just kind of stop thinking about, I want a cookie, you know?
the other thing I really want to confirm, you know, is that these are not complicated things to cook. I mean, it really does not take long at all.
It doesn't take long. And my recipes have a lot of information in them. So at face value, you might be like, wow, this is a really long recipe, but I try super hard to make them simple. And there's recipes within the recipes, like the walnut parm you can use for all sorts of things. Roasted beet salad, done, you know, like so easy. I'm going to show you how I cook with olive oil. We're going to make the garlicky shrimp. So this is shrimp that I cleaned, and I just have been marinating it for like half an hour with minced garlic, lemon juice, and a little bit of salt. That's it. That's all it is. And I think I mentioned before, when I cook with olive oil, I want to cook really gently with it because I don't want to cook it over super high heat. I don't want to damage the polyphenols in the olive oil, and I don't want to damage the healthy fats. Speaking of which, artichokes. And so I like to warm up my pan first, gently, before I add the olive oil. So these look pretty good, huh?
Oh, they're so good.
And I don't worry about the crispy brown parts when it's vegetables. You know, we talked about AGE formation last time and advanced glycation end products and burning food and not grilling food directly. When you have something like an artichoke or a zucchini, you don't really need to worry about that. I'm going to put that over here. Yeah, you put those out for friends and they disappear. You have to make.
Well, I served them at room temperature and they were amazing. You didn't even have to worry about, you know, getting in and out of the kitchen there.
I think leftovers would be really good tossed in a pasta dish too. So my pan is on medium low heat. This is a nonstick ceramic pan, which I love using because I don't have to worry about any kind of Teflon coating or anything like that. And it's really kind to the food. And I'm just gently warming it up. And this is the point of cooking where I just really want to pay attention. You know, I can talk to you guys, but I'm also staring at the pan. And I don't want it to get to a point where it smokes because that's when it's too hot. And if that does happen, it happens to everyone, you know, you get a phone call and you're like, oh no, my pan. Then you just dump it out and start over. You know, no big deal. It happens. I keep a close eye on it because I don't want to waste my olive oil either. You know, it's pretty expensive.
Annie, is farro gluten free?
No, farro is wheat. Farro is wheat.
And is there a substitute for that if you want gluten free?
Yeah, so for this soup, I would put quinoa in it. I would use rice, like forbidden rice would be really good. Forbidden rice is a black rice that has a lot of brain health nutrients in it. I don't know about the cooking time. You might want to cook it on the side. It's not going to cook in the 10-15 minutes that the farro does. But you could definitely use a non or a gluten-free whole grain too.
And what about the shrimp? Can you use frozen, and what size do you have?
So this is large shrimp, which is about 21 count. And I do want to talk to you about shrimp. Because I'm very strategic when I buy shrimp. I've done a lot of research on it, and the more you read, the more you know, right? And the more I read about shrimp, the more finicky I am about it. I only buy shrimp that's an American product that's wild caught. That's usually off the coast of Florida. Now, when I cook it, the cooking school down in Mexico, they also have very good shrimp off the coast of Baja. So, but I don't get that here. So wild caught American shrimp. I don't buy any shrimp that is imported from other countries. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of them are health, and some of them have to do with like slave labor concerns and the way the shrimp is processed. So a lot of the frozen shrimp you're going to see in the grocery store is going to be imported from places from somewhere in Asia or some undetermined place you don't know. So shrimp is a seasonal food. This is shrimp season right now, spring and summer. And if you want to stock up online from a really reputable source, I can give you some information about that, like people that are like family owned boats that go out and then they freeze it on the boat and they send it to you, kind of like how you buy salmon sometimes.
That would be great. And we'll put that in the email, because everyone here will be receiving a copy of the webinar. So some of the questions coming in, you can watch the webinar again. You'll get an email in a couple of days, and you'll also get links to everything.
Yeah, I'll provide that link for you. I do have a trusted source, and it's also my salmon source. They sell wild caught salmon from Alaska. It's way cheaper than when I buy at the grocery store. If I walk into Whole Foods or my other grocery store I go to, it's like it's so much more expensive.
But it's so much easier because, you know, shrimp you don't want sitting around for a while. So frozen
No,
sometimes.
and I like having this stuff in the freezer. It's like it's already done. You know, it's like it's such a quick meal. So shrimp provides some brain health nutrients like astaxanthin is a flavonoid in the shrimp that is really important for brain health. And it's one of the, it's just one of the seafoods that's just really good for you, you know, but most Americans eat their shrimp fried. It's actually the most popular seafood in America, but most Americans eat fried shrimp, usually from a fast food outlet, which is, you know, they're not getting well-caught shrimp from America, not getting like good stuff. Just make sure you clean it. You know how there's a vein on the inside and the outside of the shrimp? I clean both of those, which makes the shrimp maybe not quite as pretty. We can see how it splits a little bit.
I do the same.
But I like to take out the intestinal tract of the animal.
The upside and the back.
If you're gonna get any kind of foodborne illness from shrimp, you're gonna get it from that. You don't want that in your food. Okay, so this is done. Let me go ahead and plate this over here. Shrimp is done, and all I need to do to finish the dish, I'm using the same pan. There's a little bit of garlic in there, which is great. I don't really need any more oil. I'm just going to really gently saute the noodles.
What could you substitute? Does shrimp have high cholesterol?
There is some cholesterol in shrimp. You could use scallops instead.
What about tofu?
You could certainly use tofu. Absolutely. Tofu would be really good. That's a great recipe idea. Make that. Tofu with garlic and lemon and then pan fry it. Would that be delicious?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a huge tofu fan. I'm always trying to find new ways to make it. So I like that idea.
I'm hired.
Next time I come back, we'll do a tofu dish.
Great.
And so sometimes you can just get these. I'm going to add a little bit of salt because vegetables really love a little bit of salt, especially while they're cooking. It's just a tiny bit there. And a little bit of pepper. So if I was making dinner for my family, I'd probably add another zucchini to that. There's just my husband and me tonight, so I'm not making a ton. And there you have it. I'm going to put this right on top.
Boy, that looks so good.
And the walnut parm just kind of like melts into the sauce, gives it all this great flavor. I add some black pepper to that as well. If I wasn't talking to you guys so much, that would have taken me like 6 minutes, maybe, like beginning to end, you know, without the marination part.
That's my fault.
No. It's really, really, really great to have company in the kitchen. I love having you guys here. Let's check in our soup. Looks pretty good. Yeah. Let's see how the farro's doing. See this delicata squash, it's almost done cooking. It's really nice to have, you know, a vegetable like that you can cook up quickly. And I don't think the farro is done quite yet, but it's getting there. It's nice and plump and fat. And this is also one of those soups. You don't have to like set the timer or anything if you don't want to. Just keep it on low. It's not going to overcook. It's going to be great.
I actually thought when I made that, it was better leftovers the next day. The flavor just popped.
The leftovers are really good on that. Absolutely. I completely agree.
And what kind of salt do you use? I know that you went over that last time, but if you could revisit that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I usually use Morton kosher salt. I like most chefs, I like the kind of salt that you can pinch between your fingers, because if you're working in the kitchen a lot, you get a feel for how you want to salt your food without having to measure all the time. All my recipes have measurements, so I'm really precise about measuring it, how most people I think would like it. And then I also always give you the option of adding salt at the end if you want. And this is Maldon salt, which you might know. It's a finishing salt. It's flaky. It's got tons of minerals in it.
I love that salt. I just love that salt.
And if you're on a low sodium diet, I would submit that just flavoring your food with a tiny pinch of this is so much more flavorful than using any kind of like white iodized salt or anything like that. That stuff doesn't have any taste. It doesn't have any flavor. And so just kind of like the cheese, I use strategic small amounts to get the job done. So what do we have left?
What do we have left? We have wild blueberry polenta crisp.
Ah, dessert.
And one of our fans, I'm going to call him a fan, Lori, just on the Q&A said that she's having a dinner party tonight and it's already cooked, and darn, she wishes she was just making this whole thing. She said, I wish I had known it was an entire meal. I just would have cooked with you and then I would have been ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, next time we can do that. So I want to talk to you a little bit about wild blueberries. Regular blueberries are totally fine. But if you can get some wild blueberries, just keep a big bag like this in your freezer. If it says wild on them, they all come from the same place in Maine. There's a company that cultivates wild blueberries, and they're smaller than regular blueberries. They're a little bit more tart. But the thing that's important about brain health is that they have about 30% more anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are the flavonoids in blueberries that make them so good for your memory. And if there was one food that has been studied extensively to help with your brain, and especially memory in older adults, it's blueberries. Also in young children, there's just so much data on this. It's just such a slam dunk. That's why I recommend eating at least a half cup of berries every single day. And wild ones are just sort of like extra credit. You don't have to buy the most expensive ones. There's a couple brands that are, expensive. And then a lot of times I just get generic ones, like at Albertsons, which is sort of our Safeway here, our general grocery store. I just get like their home brand. If it says wild on it, it's from the same place as the really expensive ones. Okay. I've had good luck going back and forth. So I've got my wild blueberries, and I'm going to make, instead of like, when you make pie or an apple crisp or something, and I'm always amazed at how much sugar is in these recipes, honestly, that you add to fruit. And so I've been messing around with ways to make it just a lot less sugary. And also cornstarch is added as a thickener, which I'm not, super happy about any of those refined corn products. So here's a nice natural way to do it. These are chia seeds. And if you've ever worked with chia seeds, these are, if you're my age, you probably had a chia seed pet in high school, right? Remember those?
No, I think it wasn't a pet. I think it might have been a person. It might be embarrassing to admit to that.
It turns out they're really high in antioxidants. But when you soak chia seeds in some sort of a liquid, they plump up. They actually are sort of like tapioca pearls, if you've ever cooked with those. And so I'm using this to thicken the fruit part of our crisp. And instead of using sugar, I'm using fresh orange juice. This is just the juice that I squeezed from an orange. And because like we talked about the lemons, we don't want to waste any of the flavonoids. I also grated it so I can add that to the mix too.
Oh, that's
The
great.
first thing I do with this recipe is I get that going and it's going to thicken as it sits. It might only take 5 minutes, might take 10 minutes. So that's a good little trick for thickening foods. Some people actually take chia seeds and make vegan eggs out of them. And you know, like they get thick enough and sort of that egg white consistency, you can use it to leaven cupcakes and cookies and things like that. So
Wow.
that's another thing you can do with chia seeds. And then the topping is going to be, it's all gluten-free for our gluten-free friends. And I cook a lot of gluten-free stuff, especially when I'm baking. Not so much that I think gluten is a problem with brain health. Gluten's only a problem if you're allergic to it, have a gluten sensitivity issue that's been diagnosed by a doctor, or you have celiac disease.
Okay.
And that's around 4% of the population. 4% of us have a gluten problem and should avoid it. But the rest of us, I mean, 90% of the people that are gluten-free don't need to be gluten-free. And if you're avoiding gluten, it's like cutting out another food group that could be beneficial to you. So I just look at it as like decreasing the diversity in your diet. But I like gluten-free flours because they're more nutrient dense. Like I don't use all-purpose white flour hardly ever. I use combinations of really good flour. Like this is almond flour. I use hazelnut flour. I use buckwheat flour, which is a gluten-free grain. I use all sorts of different like fun flours that are nutrient dense too. So that's the whole sort of idea behind my gluten-free cooking. It's not because I think gluten is bad and we should all avoid it.
No, but I have a question here. So gluten-free, everybody's talking about it. Do you have gluten-free this? Do you have gluten-free that? And if you've never been tested and you have a little gluten and there's no reaction, you're not having any reaction like stomach cramping or pain, then gluten is probably okay in your diet, right?
Probably. A lot of doctors will recommend an elimination diet. The diagnosis is really made by a bunch of different laboratory, right down to like having an intestinal biopsy. So someone who's got symptoms of that could be gluten should probably see a gastroenterologist who knows about these things, who's well versed in the testing and get a diagnosis. The thing about celiac disease is that a lot of people are undiagnosed even as adults. So they've had, some people have had stomach issues for years and they just thought it was normal. Just thought it was maybe like related to their reproductive cycle, and just never got it looked into. And so that's sad. If you have any kind of like disturbance, you should definitely go talk to someone.
My son just got tested. It's a blood test. It's not like it's a big invasive test. So it's a very easy thing. And he was relieved because he was not celiac. So, but he had a stomach thing.
Good to know.
So he started an elimination diet, and I think gluten definitely played a role, but nothing that he has to go completely free, but maybe plays a little role in that.
Yeah, I mean, some people have gluten sensitivities, and if you have that, then you're probably one of those people that can go to Europe and eat the pasta there because their wheat is different than ours. It's not hybridized so much. It's not GMO products. Those are the gluten sensitivity people. They can get away with pizza in Italy.
Exactly. Which we need to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. So to make our wild blueberries, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up my food processor super quick.
Someone asked about what kind of a brush to use to clean your mushrooms. And I just use, I'm sure Annie would say the same. You can just use a cooking brush that's very light. It's not rough or anything. It just simply brushes them off.
Yeah, that's exactly what I use, Susan. I use a little cooking brush. It actually looks like a little mushroom. And I'm due to get a new one. It's kind of,
yep.
No, but that's what I use. You can use a toothbrush too. A toothbrush is really good. So I'm just gonna put the ingredients for the crisp into the food processor. Super simple. So we've got almond flour. Oops, we're first going to do the polenta. Oh, we're adding polenta to it. Polenta is actually not a bad ingredient for brain health. If you get a good product, it has a lot of brain health nutrients from the corn. The problem with most corn products is that they're just really processed, right? And so we don't have any nutrients left. You get a really good brand of polenta, especially if it's organic. And this one is a medium course. I'm going to pulse it first, just so that it cooks faster and it won't be gritty. And then I'm going to add my almond flour. A quarter cup of coconut palm sugar.
So this is really interesting. I have an observation, and that is when you've been making the other things today, you have not been measuring, but you're measuring when you're baking.
Oh, yes. I mean, I measure everything, but I measured it ahead of time for you guys. But for the baking stuff, it's important to be really precise. Not so much for a crisp, because it's not leavened, although there's a little bit of baking powder in it. So there's an egg, there's a little bit of baking powder, there's 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt for the whole thing. I pulse that together. And, you know, I've made this crisp without any butter at all. I've done all olive oil. And I decided that the best combo is part olive oil and part butter. So this is grass-fed butter. I get accused of never using butter, and it's not true. But this is just a 1/4 cup of butter. So if you're serving 6 people with this crisp, they're getting like, you know, a really, really small amount of butter. So we're going to add our butter and our olive oil until it turns into, you know, a crisp.
I had a question about what your thoughts on raw milk and raw kefir are.
Oh, yeah. Well, specifically for brain health or general health?
General health.
General health. You know, it's really popular in my parts to consume raw dairy products. And I'm not a fan of it because as a doctor, I've seen a lot of people get sick. And I've been on the public health board at my county. I was on their board for 7 years when I was practicing, and you just see where the outbreaks are. And so there are, if you go on the FDA website for that sort of thing, of CDC, you will see that there are outbreaks all over the country of people getting sick from these dairy products that have not been pasteurized.
That have not been pasteurized. Understood.
I'm not a fan. So there's foodborne bacteria in it that we pasteurize things for a reason. There's a concept that there's like this, they call it substance X. That's like, that gets destroyed along with the destruction of bacteria. That people think it's like this super health thing that you need to prevent arthritis and aging and longevity and all that stuff. It's never been found to be scientifically true. So, but I do like raw milk cheeses. It goes to a natural fermentation when you do the whole process of making cheese, and those cheeses can be delicious, absolutely delicious. Yeah, but I would cook with raw milk, but I would never give it to my children, and I wouldn't drink it either. You have to be most concerned with children and elderly people with those problems. You or I would probably, you know, we'd get sick and then we'd be okay, but it's the people on each end of the spectrum that are more vulnerable. Okay, so Chris is yum, perfect. And I'm just going to mix this right in the pan. And I'm making a half of a crisp because it's just my husband and I tonight. And I'm going to save the rest of the topping and freeze it and make another crisp. Maybe I'll make a peach one, or, you know, with something with the nectarines, or, you know, I'll mix it up and do something different. So I've got my blueberries. You see how that thickened?
Yep.
Isn't that cool? I'm just going to use half. I'm using, you know, about a half of a recipe. And I've got orange zest, which just makes it incredibly delicious.
Now, can you save the other half of that for your other crispy you're going to make?
This I can keep in the fridge for up to a week, maybe longer. I can use it to thicken baked goods. I can use it like all sorts of things for it. I've never frozen it like that before. I should try that and see what happens. That would be an interesting thing to do. So this is the point where a lot of recipes would have you add a bunch of sugar. I personally think that once you cut out sugar from your diet and you're being really good about not eating processed foods and not eating too many junky foods that have sugar, especially those sugary drinks, you know, that we talked about, that you will find this plenty sweet without sugar. And that's how your taste buds adjust. The first time you make it, if you kind of have a lot of sugar in your diet, your body might say, wow, this isn't really very sweet. And by all means, you know, add a little bit more sugar if you want to, until you get to that point. But it's amazing how your taste buds change. It's not just for little kids. Like when we were raising children, we kept making them try things over and over and over. The same science is at work as adults. You have to keep trying it over and over. So here's what the crisp looks like. I'm just going to put about half on here.
Speaking of sweeteners, what about raw honey?
I think raw honey is delicious. I love it. It's sometimes touted as a health food. It's got some natural inflammatory factors in it. I have a lot of seasonal allergies, and I think it's a sound recommendation to consume local honey if you have that situation. But it's, you know, it's primarily fructose. So same as with other types of sugar, like I use maple syrup or dates. I use it in a recipe that's got a lot of fiber, you know, basically.
And is it true? I've also read that you want to have local honey because it's just better for your body. And is that because the bees are from your area? And
I think it's because it's giving you like a micro dose of what the bees are pollinating. And in case that is what you happen to be allergic to, it's like having a little allergy shot. So that's my understanding of it. And I have had horrible seasonal allergies over the years. I don't know if the honey is doing it or just other things, but I don't seem to have a problem with it anymore. So that's good. Figured it out somehow. But I like honey just because it's delicious, you know. And I used to put it in my coffee, but I stopped doing that. Okay, so this is going to go right into the oven. And you can probably envision, if we're still not together when this comes out, you can envision it bubbling and being absolutely delicious.
And if you need a little assistance envisioning, you can go to brainhealthkitchen.com and see a picture of that coming out of the oven.
Yes, I do have a really good picture of this. And then for toppings, for, you know, desserts like that, like pies or cakes or, you know, just plain berries, I like to do a vanilla bean cashew cream. I don't have any vanilla beans right now. So this is just plain cashew cream. You can sweeten it a little bit if you want to turn it into sort of a whipped cream topping. This is from the same batch that I used to make the preserved lemon cashew cream. I just had a big plain batch that I was working off of. And I'm just going to add a little bit of vanilla. If you have a vanilla bean, by all means, scrape the seeds into it. Vanilla bean seeds are really good for you. Not like we'd ever consume enough of them to make a difference, but and I don't think I'm going to add any maple syrup to this, because I think the crisp will be plenty sweet enough. But that's just going to be our vanilla bean cashew cream topping. It's going to go on top.
I'm amazed at how many different things you can use that cashew cream for.
It really is. Like if I had to pick one thing, I would say it is, you know, the secret ingredient that makes everything really delicious. It adds brain healthy fats. And because it has that kind of fat, it makes food satiating. Like you don't feel like you just ate a pile of vegetables. You know, it actually really binds the food and makes it filling. And
I mean, I use that for the grilled chicken and asparagus. I use that for the crispy artichokes, and I use that for the broccoli quesadillas, and different spices were added to it. It was amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So just to finish the soup, I'm going to take a little bit of the broth. Like I said, I don't want the miso paste to get super hot, because I want it to be just very like a flavor enhancer. It's just it's not something you want to cook into your soup. So you want to add it when the soup is done. And you can see the farro looks a little bit like barley when it pops open and gets really fluffy. Can you see that? So I know that the farro is done. I can tell even without tasting, but by all means, taste as you go. I can tell that the squash is done. Looks perfect. The mushrooms look beautiful. The broth is fragrant. I think we're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and add the miso paste. And then I'm gonna add my lemon zest. I don't think I ever use a lemon without zesting it first, but that's just me. My grandparents were really frugal. Growing up in small town Sicily, I don't think they ever threw away anything.
What town in Sicily?
They live in a town called Santa Caterina, which is it's in the mountains of central Sicily. They're actually it's known for its longevity, which is really cool. Like, you know, a bunch of scrappy towns, somewhat like Sardinia. And then we're just going to chop up these to use to serve it. Beautiful. And put a bowl of that together. Did you have any questions in the chat?
I actually have a comment from Christine, who started eating from the Brain Healthy Kitchen 4.5 months ago, and her cholesterol has dropped 40 points.
Really? Well, not surprising. It's the fiber, it's vegetables, it's the careful way we use, you know, dairy products. The Brain Healthy diet doesn't have a lot of dairy products in it. There's some, like I'm not vegan or anything like that. But yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that. I've heard a lot of people say they slim down a little bit too. So there's our soup.
Oh, that's beautiful.
My husband just walked in, so I have someone to give this to.
Hi, husband.
And that's all ready to go. And I had some homework part 2 for you guys. Do you want to go over that, or do you
I
want
would love to go over that because we're towards the end here, but I don't think anybody, based on what I can see, nobody's signing off yet. So I think some homework would be great.
Okay, any questions from the chat about the recipes, about the ingredients, about anything that we've talked about?
There's been a lot of questions, and everybody will be receiving these in an email in a couple days with a copy of the webinar. Please share with friends and family, and you can always go to brainhealthkitchen.com. And remember that Annie is coming out with her cookbook, and you have the link to pre-order that.
Yeah, I do. I would love for you to have it. Okay, so for our homework last time, I think number 1 was I had you swap out dairy. Did anyone swap out dairy and find something that they liked instead? I know there was a woman on Instagram who was showing me all the things she was doing with cashew cream, and that was fun.
Well, I'm a testimonial to the cashew cream. Oops,
Yeah.
with me. Because I am using it for everything now, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and then, you know, there's other things you can do, like if you don't have time to make that, you could just find a healthier brand of mayonnaise. It's made maybe with avocado oil or olive oil instead of dairy products. And every little bit helps, right?
Absolutely.
Now you know how to make walnut parm. You can swap that in a little bit. All of these things help. I also asked you to try a fermented food. And, you know, we have our preserved lemons. I also found, I was at the farmer's market this weekend. I found this lovely family from France who's staying in Wyoming for the summer. And these are just lacto-fermented vegetables. All it is garlic, carrots, and fennel. And there's some spices in there. And it's absolutely delicious. This is my new favorite little fermented condiment. I'm not a huge fan of sauerkraut, although that's a good one if you like it. I also like kimchi. I like spicy food. This is really nicely flavored. It's not too powerful. A heaping tablespoon of my salad or my meal is my new favorite thing.
Now, would you make the same way as the pickled onions, just with the apple cider vinegar?
You could do it the exact same way. Yeah, that method is the same, and I've meant to write that up. Write that up for you guys. I will do that soon. The other one was a pantry clean out. I asked you to go to your pantry and just look at the cooking oils. I try to make it really easy for people. There's only a couple oils I use in my kitchen. I use extra virgin olive oil. I have 2 grades. I have supermarket grade, and then I have high end. The supermarket stuff is good. You just need to find one that has a harvest date on it. It's not expired. It's in a dark bottle. If it's stamped with the name of the farm where it comes from, that's better. It can be from Italy, it can be from Greece. If it's from California, that's wonderful. California has really stringent laws about labeling olive oil. The California Olive Oil Board is very, very strict. So if you see a stamp of approval by them, that's a really good sign that it's good stuff. The problem with fraudulent olive oil is it's mixed with inferior oils, because olives are, you know, more precious than other things like seeds. So yeah, so I have a high-end olive oil and I have a supermarket oil that I use for pretty much everything. The high-end oil, I'm less likely to cook with. I'm more likely to drizzle it on foods that are already cooked or make a salad dressing from it.
So Teresa has started using oat milk instead of milk.
Nice.
Andrea found some unbelievably delicious kimchi from Trader Joe's.
Oh, nice.
And Beth loves the Synergy raw kombucha.
Oh, nice. I like that too. Kombucha is a great swap for one of our brain health goals that we're going to do for the part 2 homework. And that is like, if you're cutting back on drinking alcoholic beverages, kombucha is a great thing to swap in. It's bubbly, it's fizzy, it's not something you drink all day long, but you can make a nice, aperitif with it at the end of the day. That's a good brand that has low sugar. Some of the kombuchas, when you look at the label, have a lot of added sugar. So you want to avoid that. It's great. So this week, this month, or at least until the end of the year, I have 3 things I want you to work on. One is to boost the diversity of your diet and do that by counting the numbers, different types of plants you eat in the course of a week, and work your way up to 30 or more different types of plants a week. And it comes from a study a few years ago called the American Gut Project. They looked at what has an impact on the gut microbiome the most, and the answer is plant diversity. So sometimes, you're in the habit of always getting the same things. I do this. Like I love broccoli. I always buy broccoli. Every time I go to the grocery store, I might buy some broccoli. But even if you try a different color broccoli, like a purple one or an orange one, or those green ones are really, really beautiful, then that counts for plant diversity. It's a different species of broccoli. If you're always buying, one type of zucchini, just branch out and try different ones. Same thing with peppers and all the different onions and all the different squash, all the different potatoes. It's really not that hard to do. And when you look in your shopping cart, if you're shopping for the week, there should be 30 different plants with varying different colors. Okay, and that's how you do that. That's one way how you boost the fiber in your diet. It's another way to boost the flavonoids in your diet, which are 2 of our 4 F's of brain healthy food. So you're covering that too. It's really good for your gut long term. And you can, if you have kids at home, they love doing this. It makes it really fun for them too.
That's a great idea.
Really good at cooking plants. It's better than, some of the other things that we tell kids to do. Like, like they have to eat this, they have to eat that. More like a challenge. How many different plants can you eat this week? The second one I want is super important, especially as we head into the holiday season, is to wean off sugary drinks. And there's so many of them out there. It can be really hard if you drink them on a regular basis. So just do it slowly because you're going to crave it if you don't have it. The slower you do it, the more successful you'll be. So this is soda pop. This is energy drinks. This is juices. Vegetable juices, not so much, but fruit juices are super high in sugar. Not a huge fan. I use juice to cook with, but I'm not really drinking juice on a regular basis. If I do, it's always with a meal. Never like a juice as a meal replacement. That stuff hits your blood sugar really hard and is detrimental to all that. You can drink water, you can drink coffee, you can drink tea. We should be drinking mostly water. That's the brain healthiest beverage there is. There's tons of data that says that coffee drinking is good for you, up to 5 cups a day. But here's the thing, if you're adding a lot of, saturated fat-laden creamers and a lot of sugar into your coffee, you can turn this really wonderful antioxidant-rich coffee cup into a junky beverage that's bad for your brain. So if you have a lot of sugar in your coffee, just wean off of it. Do that slowly over the course of a month. I had to do it, I don't know, like 6 years ago I did it. I was always a lot of half and half and a lot of sugar in my coffee. And I did it over 3 weeks. And now I really enjoy my black coffee more than I ever have. Tea, same thing. Try no added sugar at all. And then you'll really enjoy the tea more, especially green tea, black tea, white tea. These are all teas that are incredibly high in catechins, type of polyphenol that has been proven to be brain healthy as well. And then when it comes to alcohol, all the studies that are coming out, especially in this past year, show that moderate drinking is not as good as we used to think. You look at the Mediterranean diet and it's like, oh, they're always drinking wine. But in reality, they're not. They're drinking, like a juice glass of wine with food in the evening. That's how the people that I've met in the Mediterranean countries consume their alcohol. It's completely different in the US. The portion size is different. The context is different. So we used to think that 7 to 14 alcoholic drinks a week was probably, good for your heart health and good for your brain health. And the most recent study that's based on brain MRIs and like what makes your brain shrink more basically is the definitive data now when it comes to looking at Alzheimer's research, that drinking 0 to 4 drinks a week is far better than 4 to 7 is far better than 7 to 14. So I think everyone who drinks alcohol should probably, work on cutting back a little bit, even taking a dry month off, dry week off, heading into the holidays, just being really conscious and mindful. And then find some other drinks that you really like. There's a lot of non-alcoholic beers and wines that are actually good now.
Agreed.
What are
Well,
the things?
I have something to share with you from Maria. And she said, thank you so much for this amazing workshop. Really amazing. I didn't have a chance to cook along, but I will make all the recipes and tag you both. So
do that.
I think that's a great way to wrap this up and to thank our audience and to thank Chef Annie Fenn and her husband, who's going to get this great meal, and the folks at Kensington Senior Living for producing this. And Annie, I hope you'll be our guest again. We can't wait to collaborate with you on a new adventure and a new webinar.
Oh, thank you so much. And be sure to sign up for my newsletter. It's free. I have recipes that come out every month. You just go to my website and click on it. And it's really easy to get. I write you a letter every month about what I'm thinking and what I think is important in the research that we're learning, which is changing constantly. And I usually slip in a few recipes too.
I love it. Thank you so much. And we'll see everybody soon, and be safe.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Take care.